Okay, so let's try to solve a kind of interesting problem with loops and strings and logic. And in this problem, what we're going to try to do is we're going to write a method that takes a string as a parameter and a char value as a parameter. And the goal is that this method should calculate the number of occurrences. I should probably just call this count number of occurrences, right? It's not really calculation. Count the number of occurrences, the number of times that this char appears in this string, and we're going to return it. So we got to sit here and think, okay, so what do we have to do here? We're going to have to somehow look at every single value in this string. So why not just do this in a standard way and write a loop? Let's just start with the loop part. This kind of thing screams for a for loop. You're going to be doing this a lot this unit. So we're going to create a for loop. We can start by creating our own variable, and this variable is just for the loop. And the idea is, since we're going to go all the way through all the indexes or indices in string, we might as well create an int, and calling it index I think is a good name. And we want this loop to continue as long as index, if it starts at 0, as long as it's less than, or we can think of it, what's the first illegal index of a string? The length of the string is the first illegal index. So as long as it's smaller than that, we want to keep going. And then after each iteration, we want to plus that thing. So this is an extremely standard for loop that you're going to be writing over and over again this year, where you just start the index out at 0. You want to continue as long as the index is smaller than the actual length of the string, and then you just want to keep going. And this is basically what you'll do anytime you want to look at every single character in a string and do something. And for us, we want to say if, actually let's do so. This is something I highly suggest. Go ahead and save the value that's in the string in a separate character, in a separate variable I should say, and it just helps with your naming later, and it means you don't have all kinds of method calls and crazy parentheses. So let's create a char variable. Let's call it retrieved. My problem is I don't know how to spell retrieved. And how do we grab one character out of a string? Well, we have to call a method on this string, right? And the method in this case that we want is the char at method. You could also make this a string. You could create a whole new string object using the substring method and make this the string that you're grabbing one character long. It seems like a bit much, right? We just need to compare one character, so we might as well use chars. I think they're a little faster. Alright, now what do we want to do with this? Well, we want to ask if retrieved is equal to subject. Remember, subject is the char value that was passed in as a parameter. This is the thing we're trying to count. So if these two things are the same, then, well, wait a minute. Somehow we need to keep track of this. I want something plus, right? But there is no something declared. So this is one of these things that you'll start to remember before you start. I'm going to come back and say, you know what? I need some way of counting. What's a good data type for counting? An int. So call it occurrences. Keep picking hard words to spell. So if the two things are the same, then we want a plus retrieve. Now, you guys are really used to writing else's all over the place, right? Do we need an else? Right? What do we want to do if these two things are not the same? Well, I don't want to do anything, right? I don't care if they're not the same. I just want to kind of go on with my life. So we're done. This is going to go through, and it's going to plus occurrences every single time. Now, don't forget, we promised that we would return some kind of int. And the idea is we're trying to return the number of times this thing occurs. So we're going to return occurrences. Now, does this do everything that the method said it was supposed to do? It takes care of most of the ordinary cases, right? It's going to tell me how many times subject occurs in stir. This is dumb. Why would we return -1? Why not just return 0? I'm going to change this. Yeah, this is dumb. We're going to return 0 if it's not found in there, right? That doesn't make any sense. We're trying to count the number of times they occur. Why would we return -1? That's maybe one of the dumbest things I've ever said in my life. Alright, well, dumb things happen. Here we go. So, I think this should work. Should we try it out a few times? Alright, let's try it out a few times. So, let's make a tester for our method here. Okay, so the first thing I did was I created 5 little strings, and I tried to come up with a lot of weird cases that might break my method, right? When you write a tester, you want to try to break the thing that you made. That's the whole point of testing it. So you try to come up with weird cases. So I've got, what happens if there are a few, we're going to look for x's in this, by the way. So What if I have got a few of my target strings at the beginning and a few of them at the end? I want to make sure I didn't do something weird. What if there's just one of them kind of floating in the middle? What if there's one at the end? What if there's none? What if they're all of them? And so I want to test this. Now notice that there are 9 characters in each one of these, so I should get 6, then 1, then 1, then 0, then 9. 6, 1, 1, 0, 9. And let's try. Let's print these up. I thought of another test. Always try to think about kind of weird strings as well, right? What if the whole string is empty? So I've got an empty string there, and hopefully we'll print this all up. So again, 6, 1, 1, 0, 9, 0. See if this works. Test our method is the name of it. 6, 1, 1, 0, 9, 0. So it looks like it's working. Now this is not an exhaustive tester, but for us for now we're fine. All right, let's go back. Let's see. Can we come up with another alternative approach? This approach is fine, by the way. There's nothing wrong with it, but I kind of want to show you some other things you could think about, especially some other, how you could use some of the other string methods. There's a method called index of. I think I mentioned earlier in the year, and it seems like that we could try to use that to search this string as well, so we don't have quite so many loops. The index of method searches a string for the first appearance of whatever you put in the parentheses of index of. So what we might do here is, rather than use a for loop, we could try to use a while loop. So what we would do is we'd say while, and here's the idea, is that the index of method returns a -1 when the value that's in the parentheses doesn't appear in there. So what we can say is while str, that index of subject, while it is greater than 0, greater than or equal to 0, excuse me, we want to continue. We want to go into the loop, we want to count some things, right? So the idea is there is at least one appearance of subject in this string, so we should go ahead and count it. And now what could you do? Well, we don't want to count this thing again, right? And it appears in the string, so we need to somehow either cut off that string or start counting somewhere else. And I haven't taught you that other method yet, so we're actually going to cut off that whole string, okay? So we're going to say str becomes str dot substring from where? Where do we want to start? Well, str.index of subject is a valid index, right? Otherwise it wouldn't have returned it. And that's where we have located this particular, the first appearance of subject. So actually, if I copy that, I want to start there, but I don't want to start exactly there. I want to appear 1 after that. Does that make sense? And here's the idea. This is a valid index, right? It may be the very last index in the entire string, and if it is, it means that this is going to go out of bounds. But the good news is that the substring method allows you to be out of bounds on the length end by 1, because what it returns then is an empty string. So this actually is legal. And is it okay in our method if this returns an empty string? Well, as long as stir is a valid string, even if it's empty, then if you search an empty string for a particular character, you just won't find this character. It won't appear, and this will return a -1, and our method will just end. So this should work, and sure enough it does, 6, 1, 1, 0, 9, 0, which is what we were looking for. So this works. Now they're slightly not as clean as it could be. Do you see how I've got like stir.index of here and here? It seems like I could kind of clean this up a little bit. So let's just make this, let's use the same answer, but we'll make it a little tidier. Let's do create an int called index. And we will start it out as stir.index of subject. And the idea here is now we will continue as long as index is greater than 0. We will go ahead and chop off string. This can be replaced by index. And we will simply replace index. So the string is going to be replaced by the substring starting at index plus 1, and index itself is a number that we will replace with stir.index of subject, and then we will add 1 to that number itself. And then if index is greater than or equal to 0, we will go back into the loop. The advantage here is just that we're only calling index of 1 time instead of 2 times, and that just seems cleaner because you're having to search a string. No reason to search it more than 1 time. Let's make sure that I did this right. Crap, this doesn't work. Yeah, so don't add 1 here. That's a mistake, because all we need to do is search the new string for any index of subject, and if this is a -1, we want it to appear right there. And this is just a little bit better because we're only searching the string 1 time instead of twice. You know, we're not calling index of twice every single time we go through the while loop. So the string is getting cut off by substring, starting 1 after index, and then index is reassigned to a new index of the new string, and we'll just keep going back in counting the numbers. And you can see that this works. 611090. So that's pretty good evidence that's going to work. Alright, that's good. Alright, now I'm going to show you one last way that we could make this work without having to chop up this string over and over again. As you can imagine, this is a little inefficient because we're creating all kinds of little extra strings in there. So if I go ahead and comment that out, we won't cut the string up at all. So we're going to constantly search the original string. There's another method. There's an index of method that takes 2 parameters. It looks for the char or string that you put in here, and then in here you can tell it where to start looking from. So in this case, since I have this index that is constantly being updated, I can just tell it to start looking from 1 past its previous value. Okay? So index itself is going to start out as the first appearance of subject in the string. As long as that is greater than or equal to 0, in other words, as long as it's found at least once, I'm going to plus occurrences, and then I'm going to have index become search the same string for subject, but start searching 1 index past where it was searching before. And if this is a -1, then this loop will stop. And so this should actually get the job done also. So there are 2 index of methods. Remember, we say that when that happens, we call that method overloaded. So the index of method in the string class is overloaded. There's 2 versions of it. There's actually more than 2 versions of it. And this value can be a string or a char. Let's make sure I didn't mess this up. 6190. Good. So that's another way of getting this job done. So now you know 3 ways to get the job done. All right, good start. Have a good night. Oh, take your quiz. Don't forget to take your quiz.